You don't have to cry about it, Joel.
The superiority.
Now they're like watering.
Oh, this is what happens.
I can't believe
This
you
is what
said
Chip
that.
Lunch does to you.
Yeah.
Brings you to tears. It's a very emotional podcast.
Can you tell this is the last thing we're recording today?
I feel emotional now. I don't know why.
All right, well, let's see what that brings up for us.
Tired, emotional, and exhausted. It's the Chipline Podcast, guys. Welcome back. We just realised we've had a big day of recording, so we're here, emotional and excited. You know, at Saturday Night Live, that's why they have a writing day where they write all night, and they think that the reason they do that is because they think they're funnier. So hopefully that happens to us.
You're funnier when you're tired.
Yeah, so they're more hysterical funny. So apparently that's what they do. Back on the old. The original, the OGs.
Yeah, what episode have we? Is this?
This is episode 11.
11.
Yeah, we've got 10 in the bank.
They say if you beat the first 10, you're in the top percentage
something.
of podcasts.
Yeah, how about I get that right?
Do you know it?
It's the top. If you do more than 20 episodes, you're in the top 1% of podcasts.
10 to go, baby.
10 to
We're
go.
halfway.
10 to go. We're 0.5% there. 0.05%? Yeah, 0.05%. No, that's not half.
50%?
No, not 50% because you're in the top 1%.
What?
You'd be in the top 1.5.
Yeah, but I'm saying that we're like.
No, but it might be a completely different number to get to 10.
Yeah.
Oh.
Anyway.
Tired, emotional, and exhausted. You can understand why. We've had, as you said, we've had 10 episodes with some really interesting people from Soul Revival Church talking about how they've grown up as a Christian. We had Daniel, who's 15. We've got Bev, who's like a little bit older.
Then 15.
Yeah, a little bit older than the 15. We've got people in between. It's been really interesting hearing what they have to say. We've increased the options for chips as well.
Yes.
We have.
Which is very interesting. Your grandma, Bev
coming in with the vinegar.
Yeah.
That was legit.
It felt very English when I heard her say that.
Yeah. Well, she did say that was what happened was all the English people came over from England and
amazing.
when they were migrating to Australia
Where
and they
from
were
again?
like, well, and they would all have hot chips and chuck vinegar on it.
Yeah.
And I guess I realized that's probably salt and vinegar chips
Yes.
is from that. I didn't even think of that
And
until just
we've
then.
had our struggle trying to find. We had some chips here a few weeks ago, and we haven't been able to find a place that wraps them in paper anymore.
That's very
So
disappointing.
that
outrageous.
was a bit sad.
I don't know if I've ever had vinegar with chips.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have. Yeah, so you're English, but aren't you?
Oh,
You're-
I'm Scottish. Don't insult me like that.
But that's been really, really good. Obviously, you haven't changed your mind on chicken salt, but
No. Still the top.
I still think plain salt.
You got at least 10 more episodes to win us over.
Come on, guys. I'll pay you in kudos and YouTube views in Lionel coin if you say salt, plain salt, not chicken salt. Yeah.
Matt said plain salt, I think, on the Discord.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you
shout
want
out
to let
to
us
Matt.
know on the Discord.
We could probably get Matt on, and he can up the numbers on the plain salt. That'd be good. Did Bev say that she would have salt with vinegar?
Plain
though?
salt.
Just
It was-
plain.
Yeah.
Oh, plain salt.
I think so.
Yeah,
No. Actually, she
racking up
didn't.
the numbers.
She said salt was bad for her.
Oh.
And that she doesn't have salt
Okay.
because it's bad for something. I'm tired.
It's bad for something. We're all tired, emotional, exhausted. It's a Chip Lunch podcast. Now, what are we going to talk about today?
We're going to talk about youth group, aren't we?
Are we?
It's pretty exciting.
Yes. We've all got experiences of youth group in one shape or form. Gosh, I
Yeah.
can't speak, sorry.
And a couple of different experiences over a couple of different churches. I think it's pretty.
Yeah, and like the
Pretty
people
fun.
that we've had have talked about their experiences of youth group as well, which has been really cool. Let's start with you, Brayden. Well, no, we've heard about how I was there on your first night of youth group. That must have been and here.
And I'm still here.
And here I am. It is the last day you'll see me.
Yeah. On my last day of youth group, I want Joel to be there, jumping over chairs as well, just to bring back memories. But yeah,
But you're old now.
I'm old now, am I? Wow.
Where are you off to, Ethan?
Okay,
Do it,
Ethan's
Joel.
gonna. Yeah.
Oh no,
Do
not
it for
now.
for the gram.
No, no, no.
For the vine.
I'm not
Do
going
it
to
for
do
the
that.
vine.
Cut that out. later. Well, maybe I'm not.
If you want
so
Joel to jump a chair, I think we
Up-
need to get to
Up the likes.
1,000 likes.
1,000 likes.
on this video.
1,000 likes. Yeah, all right. 1,000 likes, definitely jump a chair. Easily. The
Ladder
kudos.
chair every 1,000 likes.
Yeah.
People. Yeah. So
Youth group.
I think youth group for me, it brings back a lot of good memories. It brings back a lot of memories of. I think it was very exciting. Had a lot of people from school who all went to youth group together, so it would be a fun time of like, oh, what's on for youth this week all week. We would that's what we would chat about, and say there was something like, I remember there being a Matrix night. I think there was a Matrix night for one of them, and I remember a bunch of us dyed our hair black
Oh,
for that night.
That is epic.
So
that's
like
cool.
it was like that kind of thing where we would know what was coming up, and that's what we would talk, like we would get excited about it, and it would kind of it would be, I just remember that having that fellowship with my school friends and that excitement, even though a bunch of them weren't Christians. They were just excited to get to hang out together on a Friday night after school and have fun, and we were friends with our youth leaders, and we were excited to see them and see what they'd been up to during the week. So I think that's the first thing that pops into my mind when I think about my experience at youth group. What about you, Joel?
I'm a bit older than you, as we were talking about before we got on the podcast. Sometimes, I don't know why, but my memories of youth group are a little bit hazy for some reason. Perhaps in the early days, because I don't know, I think I was quite anxious when I was at that age when I first started going to youth group. So I think there's a little bit of, I remember it, that sometimes the anxious moments. I don't know why. And I think a lot of my memories are based on my anxiety about things. Like a lot of my memories are based on the anxious feelings I feel like in my chest, which is kind of interesting. I'm okay, guys, don't worry. But I think looking back on it, how youth group was very formative for me. And as we will talk about later, like youth group leading as well.
Yeah.
Just really formative, and I'm so glad I did it. But it also, I mean, and the way that we do it, it was Soul Revival Youth Community at Gymea when I was in youth group, but also here at Soul Revival Church, and the way that we become friends with our leaders, and our leaders become friends with the crew that they're leading, is that was a really invaluable thing for me, because I was being led by Christian guys who were slightly older than me, but had some experience of growing up as a Christian and knew what was going on. And again, like I said, that experience with those guys was invaluable, because they were all also different ages themselves, which was really cool. And the thing that I'm really thankful for too is also that Jai McMorty was one of my leaders, who is now one of the pastors at our church. So that's a really cool link to have there. So just that intergenerational thing that we try to practice at Soul Revival Church of the leaders are friends with each other, but also at the youth group they're friends with their crew, and it creates a really nice atmosphere in able to share the love of Jesus, rather than let's surprise you with a Bible talk. Like it's an overtly Christian experience, but there's still a lot of fun going on as well. But there's these. I remember. My memories are going to be more about leading, I think, in this podcast. But like I remember just having these amazing chats with people about Jesus, and like I don't think anywhere else you were going to get that. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Do you remember any of those chats specifically, or getting? Is there like a big memory or big moment of growth you can associate with any of those chats, or is it just one of those gradual things that was good to have on a space like that?
I think the second thing you're saying, it was just really gradual for me, and just having a space to know that I was loved.
Yeah.
And there was still like just this kind of thing with school of like just trying to figure out who you were. And we've talked about before, like I got a bit quite upset at my friends of like, oh, you're supposed to be my friends kind of thing. And as we get older, there was a definite split in my friendship group, and like about with Michael Greaves, who's been on the podcast before, that we decided we wanted to keep going to. It was at that time it ended up being Solies, or I could go out of youth group into the older age group of Solies, which is on a Saturday night, and these other people wanted to go to parties and stuff like that and go drinking and all that. And I'd been to a couple of parties, and I was just like, I much prefer going to youth group or Solies. Like it it was an atmosphere and a place where I wanted to be. I think that's really the big thing that I take out of it. To be able to actually think that these people said, hey, it's cool. Like, just come and be you. You know, that was really important to me. I think that was the most important thing that I got from it.
Yeah.
Ethan, you had a different experience of youth group, I would say.
Yeah, I did.
Please share.
So one of the things that I experienced at youth group was being one of the only, if not the only, Christian at youth group. So when Soul Revival Church started, we had I was in year 9, and so we had the privilege of starting Soul Revival Youth
from scratch.
And so we've heard a lot about my friends on previous episodes. Jump onto the Lewis episode.
Yes.
He's one of my mates that rocked up in those early days, and he was one of those non-Christians that were hanging out with us there, which was really cool. But it was, so I just went and invited a bunch of my mates, and we kind of took over. There was a few other people that were younger than us as the years went on, that we picked up a few people, which was really cool, and they were all Christians, but they were a bit scared because my mates and I kind of, I want to say Alfred, the space, which was really interesting because a whole bunch of non-Christians plus myself, it was a whole bunch of non-Christians alphaing a supposedly Christian space.
Right.
It was really interesting to navigate through school. And what happened was these non-Christians and myself were just loved the whole time by these leaders that were older than us who they didn't put up with us. They wanted to be there and hang out with us every week. There's an example that we often fall back on when we tell stories about this time. But we were going to different houses because we didn't have a venue yet. We didn't have a space, and so every week was another lovely member of the church's house that they'd and one of them, one of these members had a big tree in their backyard. And the youth leaders had organised a really fun night that was really cool and had all this stuff. And instead of doing any of the stuff, the boys and I just climbed the tree all night. Like, we were up in this tree for hours, just like talking and yelling and throwing things. And the leaders would just love us in that. And then when we did come down, they were like, oh, do you want to chat and hang out? And that developed into relationships that are still a thing now. And so despite it being different, because it was a whole lot of non-Christians just hanging out on a Friday, because that's what, and then what we had, they had the opportunity to sit and hear talks and have conversations like you were saying, have chats about the Bible and Christianity in a space where, like, we spent a lot of time together at school, and outside of that, we never talked about that stuff unless they were talking to me about that stuff. But they were actually with all these people that were older than them that were like, we want to love you, and we also want to talk about Jesus with you. And so I think from what you guys were sharing, it's a really similar experience despite it being different, because there was those leaders who were, like you guys were talking about, loving, and there was that really gospel-centered focus in whatever we did at youth group.
A question I have, Eth, if someone listening was maybe a youth leader and they're looking to support maybe a youth kid who does have a lot of non-Christian friends or is surrounded by lots of non-Christians, what would be a good way you would think that they would be able to support them?
Get out of the tree.
Just from your experience.
Support the Christian or support the
Christian?
Support the Christian
in that environment.
I think, I don't know. I think I wasn't treated very differently.
Yeah.
To everyone else. Like, it wasn't like, oh, the Christian and then the non-Christians, and we'll talk to the Christian in a certain way and we'll talk to the non-Christians in a certain way.
Son.
Yeah, well, that's another thing. It wasn't like, I wasn't treated like the pastor's kid.
Yeah.
I was just another member of that group.
Yeah.
And so the amount of love and effort they put into those other boys was what they put into me.
Yeah.
And so, so part of it was, don't treat them differently. Like, but that's assuming that you're treating the non-Christians in the right way.
Yeah.
Assuming that you're not going, get out of the tree, but instead you're saying, like, in that sense, there probably was some get out of the tree, guys. Come on, we're going to do the talk. Like, that was a moment of the night. But it wasn't we want want to do our thing. It was, no, we just want to love you guys. And so one of the very first nights, as another story, was we would congregate. This is a Greaves story. I don't even remember this happening, but he has told a story where we would congregate in a little circle and chat, and then a leader would come over to like kind of join the conversation. And what would happen spontaneously is that the circle would dissipate and then form somewhere else without the leader. And the leader would be standing there like, oh. And it would just be like, oh, I'm going to go get some food. Oh, I'm going to go get a drink. And then it'd just disperse and then it would reform. And I don't even know if it was intentional. Like it's just that they'd move
like
away.
Want to get out of a conversation at a party. Like,
Yeah, it was like,
I'm just going to get a drink.
Yeah. Like, and it was just like that, right? But that was probably year one, and maybe it would have kept going till whatever. But Greaves and the other leaders didn't stop trying to break into those groups. That was another thing. Don't give up on the ones that don't want your attention because they're teenagers and it's weird to talk to adults anyway. So don't give up on that. Instead, love them and keep trying.
It's like creating a space that is like it's free from like, it's just like, this is an area where we're just going to love you kind of thing, an environment that we're just going to love you. And I think that's motivated, of course, about like a lot of the youth leaders that you had were youth leaders around the similar, like they were the similar age to me when we went through a youth group, which was the same thing. So that kind of system of leading your youth all the way through the years makes a big difference. Because you're always an ever-presence. If the leaders are there as an ever-presence in an environment where you feel quite reasonably safe to be yourself, I think that's where you start seeing the things that we're talking about is...
For context real quickly on that, Joel was just describing what happened at Gymea, something we're going to try and get properly sorted here at Soli's when we have the bigger capacity to get that. But what would happen was when you join the leadership team, you join in when your youth kids are in year 7. And then as they go through high school, you also move up through the groups with them. And so by the time they get into Soli's or the equivalent now, late night or senior high and beyond, you have spent years with them, seeing them every Friday night and hanging out with them every week and building that relationship. And that's if those boys came to that house on a Friday night and got told, and then did that for a year and went to different houses for a year, and then after that, all these leaders were like, "Oh no, I'm done. I've done my shift. See ya."
Yeah.
This would not have, that relationship wouldn't have built.
Yeah.
Like you got to actually put in the time, which actually, like as someone, I'm the youth pastor at Sorrel Church, and I am very passionate about this, and I actually think it's one of the best things ever to hang out at youth every week. And so I personally have no issues doing the time, like, because I don't see it like that. I see it as hanging out. And yeah, there's times when people are best equipped to be doing youth group, and then there's times where they can't be a youth leader anymore. But I think that when you're there, try and be there for a while and try and dig in with with the people you're with.
Yep. Is there any moment of youth group, you talked about a moment in youth group, Brayden, or you asked me that question of like a turning point for you. Was there any moment like that for youth group in when you attending youth group for you?
I can't pin down, I don't think I can pin down specifics. Like I obviously remember a lot of great talks and a lot of challenging talks, especially like I became a Christian after listening to Stu give a talk in Ecclesia. And I think Daniel had a pretty similar experience listening to a talk from Dan, which I think is a cool reminder of how powerful the preached word is, especially at youth group, and especially when sometimes during youth talks it might feel like not a lot of people are listening, or it's hard to get their attention. I think it's a really cool reminder that preaching changes people's lives, especially at youth group. I think it's an awesome reminder.
And God's the one that's reaching people kind of thing. He's just using you kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think I have good memories of, I think we've talked a little bit about this on the podcast before, but I have good memories of scripture at school. And the cool thing was that when I was at Kirrawee High, we had Fee Francesconi, who was also at church with us, helping run the youth group as well. So you kind of had this connected community where like we would go to have scripture, and then like after scripture, we would hang out and talk to Fee because we're friends with Fee, and then we would see her on Friday night, and she'd be telling us on Tuesday afternoon or whatever, are you keen to see you guys on Friday? We're doing this, and we'd be excited about it, excited to talk to her about it, and then we'd see her on Friday. I think that was scripture in school is such a cool opportunity to connect with people, especially kids like me or you, Joel, where you don't have that Christian support from other places, or you don't have that Christian support at home. I think it was such a cool and exciting thing to get to hang out with those guys in lots of different contexts.
It was the first time I heard the gospel preached, was at Scripture.
Yeah.
And I think that's, I think it's a really important thing. I experienced the same thing of like, of fee as well. Like just at our school and like knowing, Fee there, and then you see her on a Friday night, and then when you got older, we saw her on a Saturday night too, and it was just like, there is a connectedness here that she's not just turning up to school and telling her something that she might not believe in. Like she was living it out.
Yeah,
and I think that's the other thing with youth group is that you can see your leaders trying to live it out, what they're talking to you about. Like they're reading the Bible and then trying to live it out by being friends with you. I mean, we always talk about that Jesus' death on the cross doesn't just reconcile us to God, it reconciles us to others. So when people are living that out, leading youth group, allowing the kids to stay in the tree for hours because they want to love them, it's because they know that they're already reconciled to those people in the tree. So I can because of Jesus, and I can give these guys this space to be themselves. Some of them are often not very popular at school and not like don't feel loved at school. And that was like my situation. It was like I didn't feel great at school. So here's a space to be a teenager with my friends in a space where there's people that are older than me that are loving me in that aspect. And I don't know if you get anywhere else like that. In that, there's not many places you can get something like that where it's not transformed by Jesus. And I think that's what's really cool about youth group and youth ministry is that like there's always that stat that Stu, your dad, talks about is that like something like 70% of people become Christians in their teenage years. That was the case for me. I think that was the case for you, Brayden. Yeah. You're a little bit earlier. You're a special case, outlier. But that's I don't know how to describe it in a way that's just like it's just the term safe space gets used a lot, but like it is a safe space to be you. Like to be the person or discover the person that God has created you to be. And that's what you're doing when you're in your teenage years. You're trying to figure out who you are. There's all this stuff going on and you're trying to figure that out.
I think that something that we can fall into the trap of, and we can talk about this more when we're talking about youth leading, but I want to bring it up when we're talking about being a youth because it's just as important. Because something we can fall into the trap of is thinking that going on a Friday night is just rocking up to a program. Or as a youth leader, it can be, I'm just putting on a program for these teenagers and then I'm going home and then they're going home and that's it. But what the tree is a really good example of is that these youth leaders had made a program and then they threw it away because they knew we were having fun and they wanted to love us. Because it wasn't about that program. It was about the fact that they were coming and they were going to hear about Jesus. And now as a youth kid, what's really important to know, back on maybe the advice for if you are the Christian kid surrounded by non-Christian kids at your youth group, or if you're a Christian kid going to a youth group, you need to be sure that you're not just going to youth group because it's a program or another extracurricular. I don't know about your kids, for example, but the kids I have encountered through, we've talked about working at GPAC, and they have 1,000 things on during the week. There's soccer practice on Tuesday, there's dancing on Wednesday, there's music on Thursday, and then there's like youth group on Friday. And maybe youth group on Friday is just another one of those extracurriculars that I just rock up to because it's a thing that my mum's sent me to. Or what I think a really important thing about youth group is that it's not just one of those. It is a community, and it is that safe space. It's it is that space that is transformed by Jesus. And the transformation by Jesus is the thing that, like you were saying, that makes it not a program that's put on.
Well, again, Jesus says if we're like more than two Christians are meeting, I'm in the midst.
Yeah.
And I think that's the transformative power that you're talking about. My memories with youth group are more associated with youth leading. I'm not really sure why that is, but if we move on to youth leading, I think, again, on reflection, the amount of stuff that I'd learned as a youth leader, I did not realize until maybe 5 years later.
Yeah.
And it was really cool because, I think it was also the way that we set up our youth ministry is that it's very low key, long term, and relational, which is how we like to approach ministry. But when I look back and I'm like, oh, Jesus, lucky I did youth ministry and learned how to do that in a space that's like very like failure is okay in youth ministry. Do you know what I mean? Like because the teenagers that you're leading don't really care that much. They're not going to hold you to a very high standard. They only care about just. I think that the teenagers are surprised you want to be their friends. That's the other thing. Because again, in a world where teenagers often aren't listened to, if there's a space where they can come and be listened to sometimes about what's going on for them, it's like, oh wow, these guys actually are treating me with the same dignity and respect that perhaps I think I should have, but I'm not getting it in the wider world. Even at school, even the teachers treat me like I'm terrible because I might be mucking up in their class, or I might not be reaching their standard of academic achievement or whatever it is. But now, like, that's the thing is, I think that's the transformative thing for me is like what I learned in youth group as like an attendee of youth group. I'm like, oh, I can do that as a youth leader, and that was what's really cool. So let's talk about youth leading, Brayden. What made you decide you wanted to do youth leading?
I think I was hesitant for a while.
I was too,
because I held my leaders in very high regard. I think they did a really good job, and they were very open and they were keen to be friends with us, and they also dedicated a lot of time, put a lot of effort into loving us. And I think I was hesitant because I just didn't know if I would be able to do that. And I think it took me, and I think again, I think I wasn't, as you just mentioned, Joel, like there's a lot of failing to do that happens in youth ministry, and I think I just wasn't aware of that. I think I just went like, oh, these guys were always having fun. Yeah. They're all friends. So nothing ever seemed like it was going wrong, and I think I felt like, oh, I don't know if I can do that, if I'm going to be able to do that and put the time and the effort in that I want to. And I think the cool thing was when I was thinking about it, so I was chatting to Greaves, who was the youth coordinator, and he was kind of just like, just give it a go and see what happens. And I think that was really helpful because it meant I didn't have this moment where I just dropped everything and went into it, but instead I like went there. I went there with expectations of I'll just see how I go, and I just ended up jumping straight back into it because I loved it so much. But I think it took me that little bit of I think I just held it in a very high esteem. So I hesitated a little bit before jumping in, especially I knew that my leaders had put so much of their life, so much energy and excitement and time into it. I just didn't know if I was going to be able to do the same thing.
I think I was a similar thing. When we were at Gymea, the usual thing was you finished high school and then would go straight into youth leading. And there was actually a 2-year gap where I didn't do that. I think it was 2 years. And I think one of the reasons was I saw myself as more sinful than my leaders, and I thought I'm not as godly as them. But then you like, oh, hang on a sec. It's just like they're just older. That's the only thing. It's not in terms of like how sinful or not they are. It's just they're just older. But that was something I think that held me back as a youth leader. I was really felt like I was entangled in whatever sin that I had, and I probably didn't lead as well as I wanted to, and that was the thing. Is like, and probably trying to match the standard that I'd thought that my leaders were, like you were, Brayden. So that was something that took me a while to get into youth leading, but it was cool that one of the guys that I had as a youth leader, Chris, came and was a coordinator for us as we were going as being youth leaders. So that was a really cool thing to have, to have that experience and be able to help us out with that. when did you start leading? So you started in youth group when we like planted Soul Revival Church. So a little bit different for you. Where did you start youth leading?
Year 12, I think. So one of the ways we do, it was different for me because we were just figuring it out, but it starts a little earlier now. So one of the things we try and do at Soul Revival Church is you do 7 to 10 youth group, and then 11 and 12 you can be a light leader at the youth group. So year 11 you're a light leader for the year 7 and 8 group, and then year 12 you're a light leader for the year 9 and 10 group, and then year 13 you're a light leader for late night, and you can go back as a leader. Now some people figure out what they want to do when they're really young as a career. I didn't figure that out. What I'm doing now is definitely not what I was expecting to do at all when I was real young. But being a youth leader is something I've always wanted to do pretty quickly, and that was because I think I've had some heaps of really influential people in my life, and so many of those influential people in my life were my youth leaders, and I've had heaps of really excellent friends over the years, and so many of those have been youth leaders. And I saw all that and was like, I just want to give back somehow. And it looks like heaps of fun. And it is heaps of fun. Some of I definitely had the nerves, and I still do. I have lots of people to compare myself against that are far better at it than I am. And that I am constantly learning from. My dad is doing a PhD on youth ministry, and I'm like, sick, I gotta be a youth leader now. But it's awesome because I can just go home and do like, Dad, hey, I have this issue. We were in the car the other day and I raised something that happened at youth group, and he was like, oh, I had that all the time. Here's a way to deal with that. And I was like, oh, sick. And he's like, yeah, I had to learn that from trial and error. And I was like, oh, awesome. I'm glad I didn't have to learn that by trial and error. And yeah, so that's really helpful, but it still makes made the initial anxiety to get into it there, but I was just excited. And I always have been to do this. Like, I think it's the best. It's so much fun.
That's really cool. What about we talk about being friends as youth leaders. That's something that we want to be their leaders, but appropriately their friends as well. What's that like? I don't know if every youth ministry across Australia or Sydney or Australia or wherever does that. What would you describe it as, becoming friends with we would probably be leading boys most of the time.
Yep.
What's that like, becoming friends with the boys?
I think just real quickly, something I was thinking about before when we were chatting about teachers and things, and I was thinking about all the relationships with adults that teenagers get are authoritarian relationships.
Yes.
And so you've got teachers that are like, sure, I know, like my fiance was really good friends with her teachers, and I was friends with a few of my teachers, but never friends. And my parents, I am really, really good friends with my parents, but they're my parents still. And some people don't even have that friendship relationship with their parents. But when they get to youth group, they're suddenly looking up at all these adults that are, will be authoritarian to an extent. They'll be like, we are in charge as youth leaders, and that is a line that we need to draw in the sand. But we do want to be their friends, and that's a really obvious thing for them to see. They're not going, oh, you're just the teacher that'll tell me what to do.
Punish me.
Because we're literally saying to them, hey guys, we want to be your friends. Or we're literally asking them how they're going and how they're feeling, and from a Christian how their Christian walk's going. And I don't think that happens heaps. It might happen with parents quite a lot, but outside of that, I think it's so different to see adults that are doing things like, hey, how are you feeling? Especially when, for a lot of teenagers, their friends aren't even doing that. Like
Yeah.
we've talked about friends doing nothing but bullying for a whole of high school. And
Yeah.
in that, there's very little, how you doing? Like, I actually genuinely want to care for you and have a conversation with you. Like that doesn't happen very often.
One of my frustrations. That was mine.
Exactly.
But yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you're suddenly meeting people who are talking like that and acting like that, that's a huge thing for a young person to be going, oh wow, this person really wants to invest in me. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and
That's
I
a
think
part of it anyway.
that's kind of one of those interesting things looking back on. You're like, you really, I feel like as a teenager, if an adult is treating you with respect and genuine interest and is interested in what you're saying, what you're doing, I feel like that makes a huge impression.
Yeah.
And earned so much respect.
Yeah,
too.
absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's like, I can just remember my youth leaders, like they organised thing. They knew that. I remember we all got really into Man vs. Wild when Bear Grylls first came out.
Yeah.
Like
I remember this.
It was a strong phase, and I remember. So the youth leaders, it was school holidays, so youth wasn't on, and they knew they were all really into this thing. So they decided that we would all go on they invited us all to go on a bushwalk, but they like went around and dropped stuff to each of our houses, checked up how we were going in the holidays and stuff. But then we all went on a bushwalk through, I think we ended up just like going near Barton Ridge, if people know where that is, but we were just like in the bush at Barton Ridge and just had the craziest time,
That is
like running
amazing.
through the bush and being silly. And then we did a Bible study as well. And I think it was just really cool to see that it's not like, oh, Friday's a job, I turn up, I do my shift on Friday, I leave. It's like, nah, we're interested in what they're interested in because we're friends with them, and we want to hang out with you because we're friends with you, and that means we'll hang out with you on our time. You know, it's like a weekend in the school holidays. A bunch of 20 to 25-year-olds could have done whatever whatever they wanted. Like they didn't need to come and hang out with a bunch of 16-year-olds. You know what I mean?
That was
But they were friends with
huge.
us.
That was a huge thing. Being like, why on earth do you care? Like I've just been at school all week. I don't even care about school, but you care about what I've been doing this week. Like why does someone as cool as you, or as like wise as you, or as godly as you, care? Like it's such a like it didn't make sense to me. I think it was just like, and I don't know. I don't have as many examples of that kind of thing, Brayden, but I do have this one really cool example where it kind of clicked. It was a lot later, but it clicked that because I'd been, as the Christian, I'd been friends with them because I kind of got it pretty early on, what we were on about, and I understood it all pretty all rightly. And I was trying, anyway, I didn't really, but I tried to. But I understood that my friends got it when we were, I reckon, in year 12 or something, and the new Godzilla movie came out. And it was like, a bunch of us were really hyped to go see Godzilla. And so we were like, we would book tickets and go to the movies. And one of my mates that was not me, actually, I think it was Lewis. I think Lewis did it. I think he organised it. But Lewis invited Jared and Brayden and, no, not Brayden.
No, I didn't go.
Jared and Greaves and maybe some others at the time to come to the movies with us as friends, because we were just going to the movies. And one of my mates, like we still tell stories about that day because one of my mates ripped the greatest fart of all time.
Yes.
Like silent, emotional moment in the film. Loudest fart you'll ever hear. It was awesome. It was so good. And then the character on screen laughed at something. Like we were laughing so much that we didn't hear what was said. And then the character goes, ha ha ha. And we were like cacking. It was so good.
I'm excited for producer Dave's Godzilla edit.
Check the Godzilla fart in there, Dave.
Oh, it was great. It was really, really good.
The thing that I think about when leading is like we talk about establishing relationships with the younger crew, but also as we grew up, as they grew up, we grew up at the same time. And just when we like at first, like if people come in year 7, for example, and like, oh yeah, we're hanging out and we're just trying to love them and say it's cool, we're going to be friends and all that kind of thing. Yeah. But then when they stick around, you just like the relationship with them becomes really, really important. Yeah. And I thought that was like I think that was when I was like, man, I love youth leading. Like there was this time we had a camp called Revive Camp, and I think it was when our boys were in year 9, we were leading them. And what was cool about it is we were friends of all, but like quite a few of some of the boys, and I had this when I was like going through youth group, was you're just a little bit closer to like one particular leader. Yep. And it was just really special to me to have a couple of guys that just kind of like had that closer relationship with. And I think that those relationships, and I'm lucky enough that like Jai was that guy for me. Jai, like we would talk about football all the time because we both supported the same team and stuff. And he's a very good football player, and that relationship has existed since I was 15 years old, and I'm now it's 15 years on from that, or even more than that, and we're still friends. And I think it's also something that also saddens me a lot when we led our boys all the way up until year 12, and then we needed at that point in time to make a decision where we were going to stay at Gymea or leave. And that was the thing that kept me. That was the only thing that was going to keep me. Like we ended up departing Gymea. That was the thing that was the most heart-wrenching for me, was having these boys and having to tell them that I'm sorry, but we're going to leave the church at this point in time. And I remember sitting in a room telling him, and I was crying because I was like, we've established this relationship with these boys. Now God is in control of their faith more than anything else. He will hold on to them no matter what. But if I was them, to have someone that I really trusted in and then say, I'm leaving, like it can, I don't know if it damages their faith, but it can have effects on their faith, and like it's in terms of trust and all that kind of stuff. So I'm speaking that in the sense of like the relationships that we develop as youth leaders when we do it are so important. And I love how important they are and how important they can be to the leader and also to the crew that you're leading. Like I said, like Jai is like someone that's a very important part of my life. And so are other leaders that I've had in church. And it's like, again, there aren't many instances in the world where you can get that. And it is only because it's transformed by Jesus. I don't know if you've got a similar experience, but I'm trying to think of like, there's a book called Raising Boys by Steve Biddulph, right? And I always think about this, like I'm only speaking from a male perspective, obviously, because I only led boys and I'm a man, if you didn't know. But there's this point, he talks about these different stages in a boy's life where like 0 to 5 is just your mum is boy. Basically, it's just like mum is very, very important. From 5 to 12, it's dad. Dad is like the greatest ever, like my dad is stronger than your dad. Kind of thing, like, all that kind of thing. As they get older, like 12 to 16, dad's important, but they start to find other role models. And like to place a role model in like that of a youth leader at the time is just, it's perfect timing. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Is it perfect time as a young man to have another older but young man helping you, I think, and to make sense of the world, to make sense, and then also of your faith in a youth group, like, man, that's important. Yeah. And then that's the thing, like you get to a point where they're a bit older at that range, and it says in the book that they won't listen to you as much. They'll tell, like if you tell a teenage boy, oh, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, and he's like, oh, I'm not going to listen to you. And then like another important male figure in their life tells them exactly the same thing. They're like, yeah, he told me not to do that, so I didn't do it. The parents like, what? We told you that. But there was situations like that in my life, and I just think, again, like it's a really great way to shape minds. And I know I sound like I'm, I don't know, where else are you going without Jesus? And to have someone, a young Christian man helping me how to be a younger Christian man, it's just beautiful.
And grow into a Christian man.
To help other Christian men.
Yeah, like it's awesome.
Yeah.
One of the things I just really want to put forward was that as
put it on the table.
I just want to say that as we talk about building relationships with with teenagers and young people, we mean safe.
Yes.
Relationship.
I'm sorry. Should be.
No. I just wanted to.
It's an important thing to be careful of.
It is, and it's really important to say that like there's heaps of awesome stuff that YouthWorks does. If you guys don't know about YouthWorks, that's there's an organisation in are they just in Sydney? They're Sydney Anglicans. I don't know.
I think so.
But they're this great organisation that have put heaps of effort into training and helping us out to create those safe relationships
And raising young people.
and stay safe in all of that. So as we talk about all this, there's lots of things in place and lots of thoughts in place and lots of people thinking about how do we make these relationships with these young people both real friendships, but safe ones.
But
appropriate ones. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. Anything about your experience as being a leader, Brayden, that you want to share?
I think it's just been... I feel guilty because it's been so much fun.
Why? Why would you be guilty?
Oh, you're not meant to enjoy it this much, surely.
Who says that?
Oh, I don't know.
That's the thing, isn't it? Like it's like a misnomer of youth ministry, right?
I don't
It's
know.
like, it's just something you grow out of.
Yeah, my parents aren't Christian, and my mum always is like, oh, surely you'll get sick of all that volunteering. I'm like, I have too much fun. I think that's it's interesting to think about how they view stuff like that. But yeah, I love being a youth leader. I love getting to have just getting to sit down on a Friday, and my favorite part is just when you just get to chat with them about whatever's going on, whether it's something sucky that's happening at school, or whether it's who won the football on the weekend, or how much the Sharks suck. I love all of that. You know what I mean? Because they're your friends. I think it's awesome now having some youth boys that are now at late night hanging out with us on Saturday. So they've finished school. I think that's it's such an awesome relationship that you've got to build over, as you said, like five or 6 years of them going through youth group, and now they're just one of us and hanging out and messaging me memes and doing their own thing at uni and stuff. And I think that's super fun as well to get to have had that experience with them, and now just get to be mates with them. Yeah,
I have a mate who I was a leader when they were in youth group, and they have bought a new car recently, and we're going to go for a drive because he bought a new car. Like, it's just, you become like, and now I don't know how many years, he's 18 and I'm 20, I don't know, 23 in a few weeks, 2 weeks. And yeah, like, it's just really cool that we've got, that'd be a really fun thing to do, just to hang out. It's, yeah.
Yep. I remember once we went with the leaders just out, Chris, as we spoke about, our coordinator, he's a fan of the Penrith Panthers, so we got all our youth boys and went out to a Penrith Panthers game. And just doing that stuff is just fun, and to be able to pass on some knowledge and friendship and love that we experienced when we were growing up in youth group is just a really great way to make use of your time. That's a good way to volunteer, I think.
Yeah,
If you're going to do all that volunteering. Is it time to wrap up the chips, friends?
I think so.
I think it may be.
I've enjoyed the meal.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Youth group and youth ministry is a very important part of Soul Revival Church.
Mm-hmm.
It's also on in like an hour.
Oh, it's coming here on a. We're not telling you when we're recording, but it's at this church, but online. So at the moment, anyway, a very important part of Soul Revival Church. Thank you guys for your ministry in doing it. I enjoyed youth ministry when I did do it. I don't do it at this time. If you're interested in anything else, guys, you can jump on the Discord. We've got a Discord we can hang out, and that's always happening. It's always happening on the youth at the moment. And we also have the Shock Absorber podcast. If you're interested in that, check that out. And that's how we do intergenerational ministry, which we think is a great way to do church. But anything else, guys?
I'd just say if you've got any fun youth memories that you want to chuck in the Discord,
throw them in
I'd
the
love
Discord.
to see them.
That would be cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
Discord, comments, both.
Yeah.
Everything.
All the things.
Everything.
I saw the hashtag bring back Greaves
Yeah.
was trending last week.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if
We'll
that
see
happens.
what happens.
Getting a little bit too overconfident there, Michael Greaves. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. We love you guys. Thanks so much, and love you guys too.
Yeah.
So, and we'll finish up with that. Ready? Oh, big heart. Big heart first.
Big heart.
Is that right?
Gareth
Heart?
Bale.
And then into the one way.
Ready?
Just like
3, 2, 1. One way.
Ooh.